This meeting will now reconvene at 6:07 p.m. City Attorney, can you please provide the closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The City Council is now back in open session, having met in closed session to discuss the item listed on the agenda. Staff provided a report, but there was no reportable action taken. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, City Attorney. If there's no objection by the City Council, I will now adjourn the closed session City Council at 6:07 p.m.
Mayor, before proceeding, I just want to ensure for the record that we announce that Council Member or Councilwoman Pulido did join the meeting at 5:25. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. Good evening and welcome to the Monday, March 13, 2023, 6 p.m. regular joint meeting of the Bell Garden City Council and Successor Agency to the Community Development Commission. This meeting will now come to order at 6:08 p.m. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. Conflict of interest or recusal of any members should have a conflict of interest. Please announce any item you're recusing from due to a conflict of interest prior to the item being heard. Tonight's invocation will be given by our Director, Gus Romo, and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by our City Manager, Michael Kelly.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business, guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought and speech, impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen.
Amen.
Please rise, face the flag, place your right hand over your heart, and say the pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, can you please call roll of the members of the City Council and Successor Agency?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of the Council and Successor Agency, Barcena.
Present.
Councilmember Chavez.
Present.
Councilwoman Pulido.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Sanchez.
Present.
Mayor Chair Cortez.
Present.
Thank you.
City Manager, we're moving on to the presentations. Can you please introduce the first one?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cortez. This next item is for the Gateway Cities Council of Governments Energy Action Award. This award is the result of action that the City Council and city staff have taken. With that, I will turn it over to our Community Development Director and our Public Works Director, Grisel Chavez and.
Yes, thank you, Mr. City Manager. We have our representative from the Gateway Cities Council of Governments here with us today to give our presentation. I'll go ahead and turn it over to her.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. And thanks very much for inviting me and providing all the information for the hybrid meeting. I always love coming to the city councils to congratulate you on the great work to win an Energy Action Award. This is a pretty new program at the Gateway Cities COG, and there are a number of actions that cities can take to win the award. I want to point out that Bell Gardens was bronze in 2021 and rose all the way to gold in 2022. So yay, congratulations. Some of the things that you did in Bell Gardens to achieve the gold level included wrapping your gas water heater and storage tank with blankets, which conserves natural gas, enrolling in some of our energy programs and state energy programs, completing a comprehensive energy analysis and benchmarking, completing an energy efficiency project in 21, getting involved in our COG Energy Working Group by attending at least 3 meetings and by providing city updates at the Energy Working Group meetings. Also, you attended a SoCal REN educational training. That's a regional energy network educational training. And the city was recognized for your energy, equity, and empowerment effort to engage the community. So those are all the great things that you did to rise from bronze to gold. Congratulations. I believe we have a brief video that will highlight Bell Gardens along with the other winners. If that's ready to show, that would be great.
The Gateway Cities Energy Action Awards recognizes cities for their actions to improve energy efficiency and sustainability, and we hope they also help motivate progress through some friendly competition. Congratulations to our 2022 Bronze Tier winners. And congratulations to our 2022 Silver Tier winners. And introducing our 2022 Gold Tier public agencies. Bell Gardens. The City of Bell Gardens installed new LED lighting at facilities citywide, including City Hall, parks, and the Bell Gardens Resource Center. Long Beach. The City of Long Beach constructed solar panel canopies on the top of several parking structures, including at the Long Beach Airport and the Aquarium of the Pacific parking structure. Maywood. The City of Maywood converted its entire city-owned street lighting system and SCE-owned lights within the city to LED luminaries. Paramount. The City of Paramount upgraded to LED lighting at the Paramount Park baseball field and gymnasium. Pico Rivera. Pico Rivera acquired SCE-owned streetlights and upgraded more than 3,000 streetlights to LEDs powered by 100% renewable energy through Prime, their locally run power provider. Signal Hill. The City of Signal Hill installed a stormwater filtration project at their new Heritage Point View Park.
I am so proud of all the Gateway cities making strides to become more energy efficient and more sustainable through their participation in the COGS Energy Working Group. Our subregion faces unique challenges in air quality, climate, and sustainability, and your work makes our subregion a cleaner, more efficient place for everyone. And never forget that the climate work you do locally has a global benefit. Congratulations to the 13 cities that have reached the bronze and silver levels this year. And I especially want to congratulate our 6 gold level cities: Bell Gardens, Long Beach, Maywood, Paramount, Pico Rivera, and Signal Hill. You've taken great strides this year to reach the highest level of energy efficiency and sustainability. I'm gratified to see the friendly competition that has doubled our number of gold level cities. To all our gold, silver, and bronze recipients, you have set the standard. Your work is greatly appreciated by the COG and the over 2 million residents we proudly serve. Congratulations to all our winners and participants, and thank you for your dedication to energy action.
Congratulations. I don't know if you are all there in person to applaud, but I'm applauding you. There is also a physical award, and I don't know, I know that all the awards have been transferred to the city, so I'm hoping that one of your staff maybe has that and could show it on camera or pass it if you're actually physically in the chamber. They're very lovely awards made of glass with a kind of a green leaf motif on them. Very pretty. I've never seen anything like them before this year, so we got some new ones.
Nancy, we did receive the award. I think Gus keeps it in his office to himself. I'm kidding. It's over by my office, actually, by the council. I'll make sure I bring it on camera here in just a couple minutes.
Okay, great. Congratulations.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Nancy, for joining us tonight. Okay, City Manager, moving on to the next presentation.
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. The next presentation we have is for Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. We have a proclamation for this.
Yes, and our Mayor Pro Tem will be reading it.
A proclamation in honor of Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. Whereas since 1970, the month of April has been designated to spread awareness about autism spectrum disorder, ASD, which is a complex development disability that affects everyone differently and usually appears by age 2 or 3. Whereas currently there is no cure for autism, research reveals that highly qualified early intervention can improve learning, communication, and social skills, as well as underlying brain development. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Alejandra Cortez, Mayor of the City of Bell Gardens, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of April as Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, and encourage residents to become aware of autism indicators, seek early interventions, and support those living with autism. Proclaim this 13th day of March 2023.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Our next presentation is for the National Donate for Life Month. And this proclamation does have a recipient. Unfortunately, they couldn't be with us today, but it is being awarded to the organization One Legacy. This is an organization that my family has personally worked with, but they have been involved in our city for some time now. They promote donation or signing up to donate life through the DMV. So you can go ahead and sign up through the DMV as well. But the proclamation is in honor of National Donate Life Month, whereas organ, eye, tissue, marrow, and blood donation are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need. And more than 108,000 individuals nationwide and more than 21,000 in California are currently on the national organ transplant waiting list. And on average, 17 people die each year while waiting. The need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanic, Latino, and African-American communities, and a single individual's donation of heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives. And donation of tissue can save and heal the lives of more than 75 others. And deceased organ donors saved more than 33,000 lives last year, the most ever. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that I, Alejandra Cortez, Mayor of the City of Bell Gardens, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of April as DMV Donate Life Month in the City of Bell Gardens and encourage all Californians to check yes online or when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID card at the DMV. And it is proclaimed this 13th day of March 2023, and we will be mailing out the proclamation to One Legacy. With that, we conclude our presentations. And we're going to go ahead and move on to our public hearing item number 1.
Thank you, Mayor Cortez. This item is the consideration of an ordinance that would establish an art in public places process. Essentially, back at the time when the council was looking at development impact fees, one of the items that was brought up was, would there be funding potentially within those fees for art in public places? So pieces of art of all different types that could be enjoyed by residents or by visitors to the City of Bell Gardens. Was determined at that time that it was more appropriate, instead of including a development impact fee, to bring it separate as an art in public places fee. So that's what this item does. And with that, I will turn it over to our Community Development Director, Gus Romo.
Kelly, we have a small presentation for you here. Try to keep it brief. So as our city manager was saying, this was a request from the City Council. When we were bringing our development impact fees to you, we indicated that art in public places is not necessarily a development impact fee by itself. When a project comes in, doesn't cause less issues or more issues for art in public places. So the recommendation at the time from the consultant was to bring it back as a separate ordinance. That's the tool that typically was used to bring in these programs. So staff went ahead and did some research and compiled an ordinance based on some cities out there, various sample cities that we have already art in public places. And tonight is a accumulation of those ordinances. We took the best out of those ordinances and put them together. So do you have the clicker? Oh, okay. So this, go ahead. This ordinance is intended to create art citywide, both in public places and private places, as well as on the development projects themselves. So when a project comes in, and they decide they want to do art on their own property, they can do that. That's an option. So this will highlight the city's history and the culture by requiring either the art piece or the in lieu fee, which would then be collected in a fund, and the city would create art in public places. Next. Neighboring cities that we talked about, we looked at other ordinances. Alhambra, Bellflower, City of Commerce, Downey, El Monte, Southgate, and Whittier all have art in public places programs. February 15th of this year, the Planning Commission adopted the resolution recommending this ordinance to the City Council. And that would be also through Zoning Code Amendment 2023-03. That's the entitlement that we go through to get to this process. Next. So Ordinance 931 will amend the zoning code, Title 9. It'll create a new chapter 971 called Art in Public Places. It'll include the standards and guidelines for implementation of this art program. So again, it's intended to promote civic pride, increased property values will be a result of this, and provide for the general welfare. And the idea is for this program to create a legacy. So Bell Gardens will be able to have art in public places throughout the city for generations to come. So people will be able to understand their history and their culture. Next. How does this apply? Well, developments that are subject to this chapter are new developments with a building valuation of more than 500,000. But if you can imagine, nowadays with construction costs, that's pretty easy to get to. Also, though, exterior modifications. So if a project's coming in and they want to renovate, if their alterations and additions are more than 250,000 valuation, they have to provide an in lieu fee or the actual art piece. Next. The projects that are exempt, natural disaster rehabilitation. Again, we didn't want to impact certain projects that were necessary to create additional costs for them. Nonprofit organizations also are exempt. Affordable housing projects, senior citizen housing, performing art spaces, which already have art for you, and all public work and governmental agency projects. Not to say that these projects can't provide art in public places. It could be an option, but it's not a requirement through this code. And again, this is what we saw in various ordinances throughout. Next. The in lieu fee is 1%. And again, 1% of the total building valuation. So, you could have a building valuation of $2 million. It'll be 1% of that. And this in lieu fee will be donated by developers. And I should say donated by developers in lieu of placement of approved artwork. So they can come in and actually say, here's the artwork I want to propose. So this chapter's intended purpose is to allow for the in lieu fee as well as the actual art piece. Next. There's a review committee that's been established as part of this ordinance. And that review committee would administer the administrative duties established in the chapter. Committee would consist of myself as the community development director, our public works director, our recreation community services director, and other designees such as a community member. So that is still left up to the committee to decide. Council can also give us direction on that. Next. Community members that are automatically invited to participate are those that are within 500 feet of the project site. So a radius of 500 feet. They will be notified of the project as normal, but they'll also be notified about the art process. So they can participate and give us feedback. Next. The guidelines, pretty straightforward. Well, I should have put the bottom one up on top, but it's free of profanity and obscenities. That's a given, right? Openly and freely accessible to the public. So the public must be able to go in and be able to be a part of that art, be able to see it, feel it. Allow also for unobstructed viewing from as many angles as possible. In other words, you don't want that art hidden anywhere. You want it to be viewed as people are driving by or walking. Also durable against vandalism, theft, and weather. You want to make it a hardy art piece and also a low level of maintenance. Next. Here's an example over in downtown El Monte, and this is a wall mural. So this could qualify for that too. Next. City of Bellflower, if everybody's familiar with a Steelcraft facility, all those little food places. One of the containers has this art piece there. Next. And here's an example from Downey of a sculpture at their Downey Theater Plaza. Next. And some additional sculptures. And there's a rock piece with additional features for the city of Alhambra Renaissance Plaza. Next. So for public places, the committee is going to be recommending to the city council. So the council will have the ultimate say in what that art piece is. An expenditure from the Art and Public Places Fund may be made for the performing arts, provided that the performing arts occurs at a location in or owned by the city or controlled by the city. So again, it could also come out in terms of performing arts. Next. For private places, in other words, art within private properties, you would need a type 2 site plan review application. And that's something that's done administratively. And it would be submitted to the Community Development Department and reviewed by myself and my staff. Approval would be by the Art and Public Places Review Committee. And again, that would be made of myself, our Public Works Director, our Parks Director, and a community member. Now, the third part, if you have donated artwork, in other words, people aren't required to do an in lieu fee or to provide an art piece, but they want to donate the artwork. That will be reviewed by myself and recommended to the city council. So I would gather what they're trying to propose as a donation and bring it to you for your review and your approval. Recommendations shall have the sole authority to approve, or I should say the city council shall have the sole authority to approve, conditionally approve, or disapprove the artwork. Next. Artwork maintenance and ownership. The artwork on private property, that'll remain under the ownership of the property owner, but they'll also have the obligation to make sure they maintain it. So the property owner has to execute and record a covenant in a form approved by the city for maintenance of that artwork. Artwork that's donated to the city for public property will become the property of the city upon acceptance by the city council. Next. So compliance. We would need the in lieu contribution. That's one way to comply, or the artwork approval, or the proposed artwork approval. It could be, again, donation or required. And in order to receive approval for that, we'd have to issue a final building permit. Keep in mind, some of these art pieces don't require a building permit, like if you're painting a mural on a wall. But if you're doing a statue or some piece, you know, that could have the potential to fall, of course, that needs to be structurally sound. So a building permit would be required. And also there'd be a covenant on the property recorded to make sure that that piece is maintained. Next. So recommendation tonight, first reading, opening up the public hearing and finding that this ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. Based on the reasons stated in the report, there's a categorical exemption as part of your report. We're asking you to waive full reading and introduce ordinance 931 by title only. We would then come back for a second reading at the next council meeting. So council, that concludes my report. If there are any questions, I'm here, and we also have our city planner on the call.
Thank you, guys. I just wanted to be noted that this public hearing is being opened at 6:31 p.m. And at this point, council, if you have any questions or comments before we open it up for public comment. Okay, hearing none, we're now moving on to public comments from this item. City Clerk, can you please announce the instructions for public participation?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on public hearing item number 1. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the mayor and council members. Each speaker and written comments are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present in the council chamber. If you haven't done so, please submit your comment cards now for public hearing item number 1. And we did have one and I provided that to the mayor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Our first speaker is Bruce A. Crow.
Good evening. Public art. Oh, man. Art is really consists only of good artists when you have standards of excellence. We have to make a judgment, and you will have to make judgments on whether it's approved or not. So you have to decide whether something is good or bad or something in between. Now, the standards of excellence, need to be profound, inspiring, and beautiful. We have to have art pieces, if you're going to have art pieces, that need to be inspiring, and they have to be profound. The Mona Lisa, the Paeta, the Girl with Pearl Earrings, Night Watch, The Thinker, Rocky Mountains. Those are definitely profound, inspiring, and beautiful. And they do adhere to a standard of excellence. But now we have modern art. Since the 19th century, they have replaced profound, inspiring, and beautiful with new, different, and ugly. That is a fact. That is an objective opinion. Some art is ugly. Michelangelo's David, he carved it out of a rock. And it has lasted all these years. It's beautiful. And it means something. If we go to LACMA, all we get is the rock. And they tell us that's art. That's not art, that's garbage. But now we say, instead of something that you can objectively make a judgment about, it's a personal opinion. The art makes me feel a certain way. No, we're not getting rid of the standards of excellence. We're going to keep them. Modern art has replaced things that's been pushed out with silly, pointless, and offensive. And that is the problem. Now, my question is how does the art you propose provide pride in the community? Can you measure that somehow? How about your property values? How does the artwork make your property values go up? And how does it improve your quality of life? If you're just going to have art pieces from communist Mexican artists like Frida Kahlo, it's pointless. It's offensive. She never even visited the folk area in Mexico, never ever visited. But yet she always dressed up like she was representative of the folk people. If you're going to do things like that, don't fund this. Don't even have this participating in your city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, City Clerk. Do we have any additional speakers?
We do not have any virtually, and we did not receive any written communications.
Thank you. If there's no objection by the City Council, we'll close public participation. And if there's no further council member questions or comments, I will close the public hearing at 6:36 p.m. And then I'll go ahead and move to declare the proposed ordinance exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, waive full reading and introduce the ordinance number 931. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Chavez. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Barcena,
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
and Mayor Cortez.
Yes, motion carries. Public participation for non-agenda items. We will now move to public participation for items not listed on the agenda. And it is now open. City Clerk, please announce instructions for public participation.
Yes, thank you. The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items listed on the City Council Successor joint agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the City Council and Successor Agency. Each speaker are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone. When instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will first hear from the speakers that are in person.
And we'll begin with Mr. Crow.
Back again. Quickly, non-agenda. Big important date is Wednesday, March 15th. It is the plea hearing for a gentleman named Alex Rojas, who was the former general manager of the Central Basin Municipal Water District. He has 18 charges against him, spanning from deceit, bribery, laundering money, you name it. The issue is it's March 15th. And the question is how many of you plan, or does anybody plan on going to that plea hearing and representing your ratepayers and your property tax owners, because they are the ones that foot the bill for the illegal activities of the Central Basin Municipal Water District, in which Alex Rojas is front and center on this. So he has a choice to make whether he's going to plead not guilty or guilty to the 18 charges. But the question also, again, is how many or are any of you going to represent the city and your ratepayers? They have charged the ratepayers an illegal $2 fixed meter charge, which was resolved, by the way. And now, if you look at your property tax statement, there is a $10 standby charge. Illegal $10 standby charge. That brings in $5 million a year for the 24 cities. So the question is, has anybody been looking into the corruption in the Central Basin Municipal Water District for your residents here in Bell Gardens? We're not looking into it over in Downey. I can tell you that right now. We had an assistant city manager who was appointed to the Central Basin Board, who was sending out OMLO, the law firm, to attack the whistleblowers that were exposing this stuff. And now he's gone. He was conveniently allowed to resign after administrative leave. But it's not going away, folks. Alex Rojas is having a plea hearing Wednesday on March 15th. He's going to have to decide. And if he pleads guilty to all those charges, the people in Downey and Bell Gardens are going to have to answer, why didn't you even bring this up? You did not represent your ratepayers. You have a fiduciary responsibility to represent them. And if nobody does, then we're going to find out what he's going to do Wednesday. And I hope at least one of you will have an interest to find out what he pleads. Thank you.
Alfred Tobar. Lee Squire.
Lee Squire, City of Downey, Vietnam veteran, 1967 to 1970, U.S. Army. Mayor, City Council, and the Vietnam Veterans of Bell Gardens. March 29, 2023 is National Vietnam War Veterans Day. Veterans Day. On behalf of the Vietnam Veterans of Bell Gardens, I am requesting the following from the City Council. That a proclamation be presented at the next council meeting to the veterans group of your choice who serve the City of Bell Gardens. I'm also asking that a wreath be placed at Veterans Park in front of the statue on May 29th, 2023. 58,479 were killed in action in Vietnam. 23 were from Downey. I apologize, I do not know how many from Bell Gardens. We who served swore an unspoken oath that we will speak for our brothers and sisters who never returned from Vietnam. 58,479 of this country were killed in Vietnam. This is 116,958 Gold Star parents. Gold Star parents are parents who lost a son or daughter in combat. Please consider my request from the City Council. Thank you.
Alfred Tovar.
Hello, Madam Mayor, City Council. I'm just here to introduce myself to everybody. I'm Alfred Tovar. I'm the Interim District Director for Assemblywoman Blanca Pacheco. Just here to say hello. I want to make sure we put a face to the name. I've emailed a couple of you guys. I know Wendy, who is the field rep for Bell Gardens, has reached out to you guys. Just wanted to make sure I had a chance to introduce myself to the council and to the community. If there's ever anything that any of your residents bring to your attention that fall under jurisdiction of the state, help with EDD, franchise tax board, DMV, those kinds of issues, refer them over to us. We're always ready to be of service. Just wanted to make sure I came in to say hello. So hello, thank you guys.
Thank you. María Padilla.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es María Padilla, soy residente de aquí de Bell Gardens desde hace 27 años. Es un gusto, estoy emocionada de estar nuevamente aquí en el concilio en persona, viéndonos de frente a los ojos. Pues mi motivo por el que yo estoy aquí, yo creo que ya todos ustedes lo conocen, que es abogar por la estabilidad de control de rentas para las casas móviles y trailers, que ellos han quedado fuera de lo que fue la ordenanza de control de rentas. También otro punto es seguir dándoles a conocer a ustedes pues lo que está pasando afuera. La comunidad está todavía sufriendo por lo del control de rentas, porque muchos han estado teniendo alzas de aumento de rentas que no están dentro del 4% como se pasó la ordenanza, y entonces también están sufriendo de acoso o han sido desalojadas. Entonces, en mi participación de hace 15 días, yo les pedí a ustedes que pusieran un comité para que vigilaran que se cumpla esa ley, porque yo creo que gran parte de la credibilidad de la ciudad con la comunidad es el que se respeten las leyes que salen de aquí, de este lugar que ustedes trabajan. Con mucho respeto me dirijo a ustedes, les traigo esa inquietud para que pues lo consideren y puedan poder ayudarnos a nosotros que somos su comunidad. Muchísimas gracias.
Carmen Rodríguez. Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Carmen Rodríguez. Vivo aquí en la ciudad de Bell Gardens hace 8 años. Vivo en un trailer park. Mi esposo ya tiene ahí 20 y tantos años. Yo llegué hace 8 años. Desde un principio hubo muchas irregularidades en cuanto a que los 2 managers hacían lo que ellos querían, no nos permitían hablar con los dueños. En una ocasión llegó un documento que decía que venía de una oficina de Los Ángeles, cuando a mí una vecina me había mostrado que las revisiones de gas, las inspecciones, y eso las hacía Riverside, no unas oficinas de Los Ángeles. Era una hoja muy diluida, tachoneada con donde pasan los fax, estaba tachoneada la fecha, posfechada con un plumón rojo arriba. O sea, era una hoja muy sucia como para que hubiera salido de esa oficina en esa ocasión. Busqué en internet y hablé a esa oficina, me pusieron un traductor y ya les dije yo lo que pasaba, que yo consideraba que esa hoja no había salido en ese momento de ahí. Me pidieron si se las podía mandar por fax, se las mandé por fax y dejaron de llegar esos papeles durante los siguientes casi 8 años. A raíz de eso, pues como muchas personas no somos de las que nos dejemos manipular por la manager de ahí, nunca hemos tenido mucha comunicación con ella, entonces siempre ha habido acoso de muchas maneras. Lo último fue que hace 4 años nos aumentaron la renta de una manera indiscriminada. Mi tráiler es de un tamaño de una minivan. La tráiler de enseguida caben 8 veces esa tráiler. Sin embargo, a mí me aumentaron $75, que era un 15%, y a las trailers grandes les aumentaron un 7%. Entonces, 2 de mis vecinas me dieron su hoja donde venía el aumento para ver qué podíamos hacer. Anterior a esto, por ese documento que llegó, yo me asesoré y un abogado me dijo que fuera al City Hall de Norwalk y pidiera un documento de la propiedad y que ahí venía el nombre de los dueños. Para ese tiempo, la dueña falleció hace como unos 3 años. Entonces, todavía en noviembre de hace un año aparecía en sesión testamentaria. Ahora en enero volví a ir por un récord, ya aparecen los nombres de los nuevos dueños, que es la hija y la nieta. Hace un año nos fueron a la escuela de inglés y nos dieron un volante por lo del control de renta. Entonces yo se lo pasé a varios vecinos ahí y me imagino que los managers se enteraron y luego pues empezó la agresión de que yo traigo abogados, que no permitirme hablar con los dueños. Le digo, ¿por qué me está subiendo a mí el 15% si mi espacio es el más pequeño porque no cabe una traila grande? Entonces le pedí, ¿se acabó el tiempo? Ok, bueno.
Lucía, Lucía Veloz.
Buenas tardes, miembros del concilio.
Sorry, the Spanish interpretation is coming through the speaker.
Ok, bueno, mi primer punto es la obstrucción de la calle Loveland con Garfield. Llevamos batallando con esta obstrucción más de 3 años. Los que tenemos hijos en escuela suba y suba intermedia, estamos todos los días rodeando esas calles. Es una de tráfico, es peligro porque ha habido carros que no respetan, o sea, no están respetando la obstrucción y se siguen pasando. Creo que es tiempo de que ya la ciudad tome acciones con esto, porque si me pusiera a cobrar la gasolina que gasto en dar la vuelta, y de verdad que me estoy arriesgando. Entonces, también a que me den un ticket, está muy peligroso el cruce. Por favor, les pido eso, que ya lo pongan como algo prioritario por todos los que van, esos muchachos que pasan para suba y suba intermedia. Segunda noción que yo tengo para ustedes es pues que se están viendo un poquito lentos con esto de control de renta. Sabemos que tenemos una ordenanza, pero como afectada y que fui a poner mi queja, sigo con el mismo problema. La ciudad no me está ayudando, no me está haciendo la acción para ponerle un alto a mi rentero. Entonces, tanto yo como otras personas siguen batallando con lo mismo, porque de nada sirve tener una ordenanza si no se está aplicando como tal. Les hemos pedido a ustedes que hagan lo posible para que se dé esta ordenanza a todos los miembros, a cada uno de los habitantes de Bell Gardens. Si es necesario, nosotras como la Unión de Vecinas somos capaces de dar ese papelito a cada casa. Solo está en que ustedes lo quieran. Si ustedes lo quieren, lo van a hacer. Y esto urge, porque sabemos que esta ordenanza se acaba el 12 de octubre y los meses pasan y la gente sigue sufriendo, se los aseguro, y yo soy una de ellas. Así que por favor, tomen acciones y esto son prioridades para nuestra ciudad. Yo sé que hay muchas cosas más importantes, pero tomen en cuenta que nosotros somos residentes y no queremos irnos, queremos soluciones de nuestro concilio, porque los queremos y porque han sido muy amables con todas nosotras, con toda la gente. La verdad, mis respetos para cada uno de ustedes, porque lo he visto, que este concilio es maravilloso y lo que han logrado, los premios que les han otorgado. Para mí, Bell Gardens es una ciudad que está a la vanguardia y que va a seguir creciendo. Y gracias también a la ayuda de sus residentes. Gracias.
City Clerk, do we have additional comments? Actually, we're going to do. Okay, City Clerk.
Yes, we do have one who raised their hand virtually. Okay, persona en el, por favor, que, perdón. Para activar su llamada, por favor, ah, ah, sorry, one second. O marque el icono para levantarle el mano. Ok, para reactivar su llamada o activo el sonido en el aparato en cual está usando Zoom. Ok, ahora puede hablar.
Hola, buenas tardes. I'm Sandra Garcia from the city of Bell Gardens. Buenas tardes a todos. Soy Sandra García de la ciudad de Bell Gardens. Soy inquilina por 25 años. Somos familia de 3 adultos. Quisiera dejarles saber lo que sucede en nuestra comunidad. Los inquilinos de Bell Gardens estamos sufriendo porque no pueden implementar la ordenanza de control de renta como es. Desgraciadamente, muchos dueños están haciendo caso omismo de esta ordenanza y los inquilinos están viendo obligados a ceder a las peticiones de los dueños porque la ciudad está siendo lenta en interceder por los dueños o cooperativos. Una petición como inquilina es que esta ordenanza sea dada a conocer en cada hogar de Bell Gardens. Protejamos a nuestros residentes, puesto de cada uno de ellos creyeron en ustedes como concilio ciudad libre de acoso, libre de injusticias y discriminaciones, porque todos somos la comunidad de Bell Gardens y nosotros que hemos pagado renta tras renta, mes tras mes, año tras año, hemos sido inquilinos buenos, que si el dueño nos pedía requisitos, lo hacíamos. Y el dueño anterior era un slum dueño, un dueño que no arreglaba nada, que no hacía reparaciones, decía si nos gusta, si no nos gusta, sálganse. O que lo arregláramos nosotros de nuestro bolsillo. Nos dejaban hasta mes sin baño. Y hay una terrible infección de ratones e insectos. I'm sorry. Allí vivimos con pollution, polvos, junto al 710 freeway. Nunca nos han dado air filters, nunca tuvieron smog detectors o calentones en 22 años. Y lo voy a hacer más corto porque escribí algo largo, pero lo voy a hacer corto. Yo sigo siendo acosada por la compañía AQP Management Company que entró aquí a la ciudad. Yo y mi familia. Ahorita tengo desde noviembre que no pago la renta porque ellos no la quieren aceptar, no que yo no la tenga. Ellos me están acosando de otra cosa, nos llevaron a corte y ellos se retiraron de la corte porque yo los llevé a juicio. Yo no me puse de acuerdo en lo que ellos estaban diciendo. Cuando los llevé a juicio, ellos se echaron para atrás un día antes de la corte. Ahora no están aceptando todavía la renta. No me han dado un 3-day notice, no me han dado una notificación de que pague renta o quité. No quieren aceptar la renta. Me vienen y me dejan dwellings, que son notificaciones que haga esto otro. A que me quieren tumbar mis árboles, que me van a quitar el parque, que yo no tengo. ¿Es todo?
Sí, ya es tiempo, gracias.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, City Clerk?
That was the last one, and we did not receive any written comments.
Thank you. If there's no objection by the members of the City Council, Successor Agency, I will close public participation for non-agenda items. Public participation is now open for items listed on the City Council Successor Agency Joint Agenda. City Clerk, can you please announce the instructions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The members of the public will now have an opportunity to speak on items listed on the City Council Successor Agent Joint Agenda. Please state your name for the record before addressing your comments to the members of the City Council and Successor Agency. Each speaker are limited to 3 minutes. Callers wishing to make a comment may do so at this time by dialing *9 from your phone, and when instructed, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Individuals joining us through the Zoom app may request to make a comment by using the raise hand feature on Zoom and select the unmute or the microphone icon when instructed. We will begin to hear from the members of the public that are physically present in the council chamber.
Lilia Chavez.
Buenas tardes a todos, miembros del concilio. Mi nombre es Lilia Chávez. Creo que ya todas las demás compañeras dijeron casi todo lo que yo quería decirles, pero no está de más de que yo les comente. Yo vivo en un complejo de trailers y la única razón por la que yo estoy aquí es para pedirles a ustedes que no nos dejen fuera en lo que es el control de renta, en la ordenanza. Porque el hecho de vivir, rentar un espacio, no se quiere decir que no se está pagando renta, es un dinero que también se está pagando. Aparte de todo esto, en estos complejos, yo pienso que no nada más en ese, es obvio que se está mirando que en todas las personas que vivimos en complejos de trailers está teniendo el mismo problema con los dueños y los que nos cobran las rentas. Solamente quiero pedirles que no nos dejen fuera, que nos tomen en cuenta como personas y residentes de la ciudad y que vean ustedes que el vivir bajo un acoso se considera un crimen y muchos lo sabemos. Y ahí se vive sobre acoso, se vive pues, sobre mucha injusticia y estamos viviendo bajo muchas irregularidades. Entonces ya he tratado de hacer muchas cosas ahí, pero en fin, queda en lo mismo. Sí hay muchas cosas que sí.
Pues siento, señora Lilia, no la quería interrumpir, pero lamentablemente, como ahorita estamos en los temas de la agenda, usted puso el número 9 y esto no trata con el número 9.
Oh, yo pensé que era yo le puse
sí,
el
eso
número 9.
es muy específico sobre un acuerdo, pero si quiere podemos charlar después.
Oh, no, está bien,
después.
Sí, está bien.
No la quería interrumpir, pero.
No, no te preocupes. Yo puse el número, me dijeron poner el número. Ustedes no se preocupen.
Pues si no está dentro de la agenda, entonces el otro periodo que hicimos al principio sería más apropiado si no está dentro de la agenda.
Oh, no se preocupen. De todas maneras, ya cuando menos ustedes ya me conocen. Entonces, yo hablo con cualquiera de ustedes, con Marco, contigo, Alejandra, con ustedes. Ustedes ya me conocen a mí y yo estoy abierta.
Sí,
Gracias. Ándale, gracias a ustedes.
Y lo mismo, señora, la señora Estela Mata también la tenemos bajo el número 9, a menos de que sea bajo el acuerdo específico, entonces sería fuera de la agenda. Señora Mata, ¿tiene algún comentario?
No, es algo que no está en la agenda.
Ok, bueno. And now we're moving on. I don't have a name, but it's regarding item number 14 for street vending, but it doesn't have a name. Yours.
I thought I signed it. Street vending. SB 946. That is the edict brought down upon you by the LA County. The inconsistencies telling you what you can do and what you can't do. Obviously, there's an issue here as far as people thinking your representation isn't forceful enough against the powers that be, that maybe you have autonomy, that you can decide to do things on your own. Maybe that's correct. I don't necessarily disagree with that. Checks and balances are good. That's like affordable housing, which the state, the governor, that lily white progressive Democrat up there in Sacramento, Gavin Newsom, is now suing the city of Huntington Beach because they want to maintain their single family dwellings, and he wants to put APUs, tear their house down and put 4 units on each lot and increase the density, which doesn't help climate change, according to the progressives. I don't know how that saves the planet, but the city and the residents seem to think they don't have to take this from the governor. And I tend to agree with them, especially if you have a single family dwelling. We don't want urbanization. We want to be in the suburbs. That's what we like. We have a standard of excellence that we like to maintain. However, street vendors, your issue, is it a standard of excellence to just let anybody up and down the street sell their products unregulated? What, I don't know. It's a hard thing to consider. I mean, how about a little kid that wants to sell lemonade on a hot afternoon? Do we go up there and just take his stuff away from him, or her stuff away? I don't know. It's a tough situation. However, you do have an obligation to maintain a standard of excellence to your brick and mortar buildings who have put in the work and the sacrifice in bringing a product at a reasonable price to the residents and the customers. And when you have competition like that, the price is lowered for the consumers. That's what we want. So, and that's the society that we want. We don't want, garbage just willy-nilly all over the street. Okay. You have to defend your brick and mortar buildings, and don't worry about the inconsistencies here. It's none of your concern, because the county is the one that issues permits, not you. And the county has only issued 1 permit that I know of out of approximately 25,000 street vendors. Thanks.
No, that is all. No one virtually raised their hand, and we didn't receive any public written comments.
Thank you, City Clerk. If there's no objection by the City Council, I will now go ahead and close public participation for agenda items. City Manager, can you please give your report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cortez. Just want to mention a few items that are coming up. This Thursday at the skate park, in the last few years, due to COVID, things like that, we haven't had any events going on at the skate park. And so we've got a skate jam going on. So people are invited to come and skate. There'll be music, a live band there from 6 to 8 p.m. this Thursday over at Veterans Park. Also just want to mention again, Farmers Market goes on every Friday from 11 to 3 p.m. And just way in advance, want to mention Saturday, April 1st, we'll have our Spring Festival and Egg Hunt. This will be our first large event that we have throughout the year. So looking forward to that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager. We're going to go ahead and move on to consent calendar, but for council's benefit, we're going to go ahead and pull and table item number 9. So is there any other items that council wishes to pull for discussion?
I'd like to pull item number, I believe it's 8.
Okay, item number 8. I'll go ahead and move to approve the rest of the consent agenda with the exception of item number 9 and the exception of item number 8. May I have a second? I'm taking a second. Yes. Oh, Barson, a second? Yes. Yeah, I made it. Yeah, we're not approving that one yet, just yet. Roll call vote, City Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of the Council and Successor Agency, Barcena?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pulido?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Sanchez? And Mayor Chair Cortez?
Yes, consent calendar passes with the exception of items 8 and 9. 9 is tabled, and now City Manager, item number 8.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cortez. So this item is consideration approval of a resolution that would approve an amendment to the gross revenue license fees imposed on Park West Bicycle Casino. So in summary, There are new owners at the Park West Casino for about the months or so. Starting in August of 2022, they began some innovative programs in an effort to generate additional revenue, obviously for their business. And then incidentally, also for the City of Bell Gardens from a licensing fee revenue perspective. And what they've done is they're putting additional monies into that program. And what they requested was, considering that the monies that they have that they put in have conceivably already been taxed through this licensing fee, what they asked was for the additional revenue that was gained from these programs, if the initial amount that they put in, the seed amount, if you will, if that amount could be forgiven from a tax perspective, and the city would reap the benefit from all of the additional revenues that would potentially come. Since that time, at that time when the request was made, from a staff perspective, this was something new that we'd not seen before with the previous owners, and it was recommended to really just watch this and see if this was something that made financial sense for the City of Bell Gardens, because we're not in that business and difficult for us to understand how would that work. So starting in August, they began this program where approximately they would put several millions of dollars of incentives out there through programs to generate additional revenues. The result of that has been, if you net out the money that they've put in that conceivably has already been imposed a license fee on it, it's been netting the city approximately $400,000 per month. So what staff's recommendation here is on this item is to go back to the start period of this program, as they've demonstrated over 7 months now, that it does in fact work, and it generates obviously additional revenue for the casino based on the risk of money that they put out there, and also incidentally derives a benefit to the City of Bell Gardens for the amount that is beyond the actual money that they put in. So kind of in layman's terms, if they put in a dollar and they end up with an additional $3 worth of revenue, that the city, instead of taxing the $3, would tax the net, or $2 in that instance. And so looking at the 17-month period of times, if things go the way that they've gone over the last 7 months, it would generate an additional $6.8 million in revenue for the City of Bell Gardens. And what the City of Bell Gardens would do is to forego any license fee revenues on the money that the casino puts at risk, which equals about $5.1 million. So that's probably a lot of detail there. This change would be applicable through December 31st, 2023, at which time the council would be able to consider whether they wanted to continue doing this or not. The council also has the opportunity within the ordinance to change the fee structure for these licensing fees at any time before that as well, if the council so desire. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike, for explaining that. And that's the reason why I decided to bring this item for discussion. It's just a big item. It's really important. And I feel like I need to point out some of the findings, what I learned in the process of reading this item and digesting it and really becoming aware of what it means. So basically, there is a 17-month period that we're talking about here. Out of that 17-month period, there's already been 7 months, is that correct, Mike, that passed? So this means that we'll be retroactively applying this resolution. Now, how much money are we talking about hypothetically giving back, right? Because the fees apply to the money that has already been transacted. And I believe the answer to that is $3.6 million. And that is a large sum, in my opinion. I think I definitely want to make sure that the council is aware of it. Now, with the additional 10 months that are still yet to be accounted for, meaning from March all the way to December, that adds an additional, can you help me out there, Mike? what is the additional amount that we project? Because now we're talking about, we're estimating, correct?
Yes, so for the first 7 months, it's approximately $300,000 per month. So it would be 2.1 million from August through February, just to be clear on that. And then from a go forward basis from March through December is 10 months and would be approximately another $3 million. So a total for the 17 months of $5.1 million of the licensing fee that would not be charged.
Okay, so $5.1 million total and 3.6 million that we've already transacted, meaning that's the retroactive amount. Just want to put that out there and make sure that the council knows about this. And also, the revenue that's coming in from these efforts, and please, I want to make sure that this is correct, Mike. The revenue is $6.8 million. That's the estimated revenue, correct? Is that revenue only from the efforts, from the additional efforts?
Yes, so it's approximately $400,000 per month over the 17 months. That's what it's been over the last 7 months, and at approximately 400, averages 400,000 per month. So if we extrapolate that going forward, the total would be $6.8 million of revenues that's related to the additional efforts from these programs.
So that leaves us with a total revenue of $1.7 million, right? Projected.
Well, I mean, it's pure revenue of $6.8 million. We don't have to pay anything back from that. We would receive actual $6.8 million. The theoretical, I guess, if it was described as foregone revenue, would be an additional 5.1 million.
Thank you. So then that is after, if we vote yes, then those $6.8 million is actually the total revenue.
Yes, that's total new revenue. Yes.
Total new revenue. Mine is a 5.1 million that we're kind of giving them a break on, correct?
Yeah, so I would say the 5.1 million is foregoing. So if the council were to not take this action and presume that they would continue on with these programs, the total would be the 5.1 million plus the 6.8 million.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you. And that's all for me. Thanks.
Any other questions?
So just for confirmation, Mike, I mean, this is 6.85 plus 5.1 million. So we're giving them a break of 5.1 million. But if we didn't give them the break, if we didn't vote yes on this, if we did not vote yes, instead we vote no, we would secure another 5.1 million.
Yeah, I would say theoretically, I just would have to caution that presumes that they would continue putting $3 to $4 million a month at risk. They may or may not do that.
Okay, thanks.
Have we looked into, Mike, discussing this further with the council? Maybe finding a balance, or because it is a large amount of money, it's $5.1 million that are retroactively being looked at. So just wanted to ask if that was part of the rationale, the reasoning process to deal with this item here.
I mean, I think the reasoning process. So if you look at why would you forego the $5.1 million? The rationale for it is the money that the card room puts out there is at their own risk. They may or may not get it back. We can't require them to run these kind of programs. We can't require them to grow the business. It's their own money that they presumably received through their card fees, which we've already extracted a revenue from. So in a sense, what the card room would argue is there's a double taxation going on there. We tax their card revenue, their card fee revenues, and then they use that and put it at risk, put it out there, and when it comes back again, we tax it a second time. So the rationale behind it is not from the perspective of really negotiating to say, well, we're going to continue to double tax part of it. There's a reasonableness, I think, in the request, in that the city puts out zero additional effort for $6.8 million of additional revenue. There's no risk to the city at all. We don't put a dollar up. We don't provide any additional services. And what the casino does is they obviously make more revenue for themselves. I'm sure the net revenue has to work out, otherwise they wouldn't do this. But the request is to just not tax this amount again. Presumably, if this type of activity would have been going on when our municipal code was adopted, I would assume it would have been considered at that time as, something that you may not tax just out of a numerical fairness, if you will.
One last question, and is there a time constraint in regards to this item? Do we need to get this done in order for like the tax season or something like that? I would assume it's the fiscal year that we're looking at here, right?
Yeah, I think so. The reason that it would make sense to get this done is for a number of reasons. We've got an upcoming budget. We've got a mid-year budget presentation that's coming up here. I would say there's new owners at this establishment that are trying something new that the city is significantly benefiting from without any additional effort. And the effort here is to really encourage that type of economic activity. So I think from a timing perspective, it just raises a question as far as the council's, I guess, support in encouraging this type of activity. But beyond that, I think anything is on the table on this one. It's for the council's discussion. So I think there are benefits to considering it now, from an acknowledgement of the financial benefit, an acknowledgement of what the request is, and also just an acknowledgement that our budget cycle's coming up. So there's some benefit in making some kind of decision on it now, and also provide some certainty, some economic certainty for the card room to continue such activities. But there's not a mandated compliance date or anything like that. So I don't want to oversell it like there's a contractual requirement or anything like that.
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate all the information. I think in part, there's two things that I'm noticing, after obviously hearing the report and then reading over the details. And some questions have been answered and some haven't. One of them being, and we're trying to do this in good faith, right? Obviously the casinos are our biggest revenue generator here in the city. They've been doing this for the past 7 months already. My question is, why come to it now?
Council member, I can just answer. So if they would ask you it before they've demonstrated their ability to do it, I think we would all say, we haven't seen that done before. So why would we in advance partner or give consideration for any kind of thing that may look like a concession where it may result in a decrease to the revenues received by the city? So if the city were to agree to this on month one, and let's say the entity puts out $3 million and their revenues actually come in $2 million short, the city's revenues would be significantly impacted at that point. So it really wouldn't make sense to consider this until there was some sense of certainty. And I think even just a quarter or 2 quarters would probably not be enough, because again, we haven't seen this in the first place. There could be some variations due to holidays, things like that the business understands that we're not experienced in. And I think at this point, we're 7 months in. It doesn't appear that there's any reason to believe that this is not going to be significantly successful as it is so far.
Okay, Madam Mayor, whenever it's the right time, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
So given that we're talking about several $1 million in this decision alone, I'd like to ask to table this. So that would be my motion. And I do want to say that I appreciate all of the efforts that the casino's making to increase the revenue and help our residents. I do see it. I do think they're doing a great job. But I want to make sure that as a council, we are given all the information that we need and options as well in order to support the casino in the proper way. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to motion to approve this item, and then I'll take seconds for either motion 1 or motion 2, or if there's an additional motion.
I'll go ahead and second Councilmember Barceno's motion. I think that he definitely has a point in terms of, this is another $5.1 million, right? So at the end of the year, we're looking at either, and correct me if I'm wrong, just in case, 11.9 million in terms of just casino revenue surplus, or we're looking at 6.8, right? I think the casino has been doing a phenomenal job in terms of gathering community, gathering, other, casino people, gamblers per se, or people who just like to go to the casino. And ultimately that's good for our community in terms of revenue. But in part, I think for it to be retroactive, that's where I have a little bit of questioning. Perhaps if it was maybe drafted differently, where from now on forward, it'll be, from March till December, maybe that could be an option. But the idea of going retroactively, I think that's one of the questions for me. The casino's been doing good. It continues to do good. And I mean, again, it's a business, they're making money, literally, in terms of, casino, gambling, chips and all that. So anyways, that's why I'm seconding it.
And I'd like to second to approve this motion. I feel that we can approve it at this time. The casino has been a good partnership with the city, and to jeopardize getting the revenue that we've been getting that we've never heard of before, they can take this somewhere else and not continue it here with the casino within our city. So I'd rather just approve this motion.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote on motion number 1. It has the the motion was by Councilmember Barcena with the second from Councilmember Chavez. We'll take that to a roll call. And then if that fails, then we'll do motions number 2.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, members of the council and successor agency, Barcena,
Yes.
Chavez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Pulido,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
No.
and Mayor Cortez.
No. Motion second motion?
Councilmember Barcena,
No.
Councilmember Chavez,
No.
Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
and Mayor Cortez.
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to our discussion items, we're going to go ahead and move discussion. There's no objection by the council. We're going to move discussion item number 15 to the top of the list, given presenter constraints. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Cortez. This next item is one that we spoke about, I believe it was at the last meeting. It's regarding the membership in the Gateway Cities Affordable Housing Trust. I'm going to turn it over to our Community Development Director, and there's going to be a presentation, but I did want to mention one thing that was a question, I think, at the last time we heard this item, was regarding the fees to join membership. There was a question regarding when are those membership fees due. So it's my understanding, and Gus, correct me if I'm wrong, that if the council were to decide to join this housing trust, we have about 12 months to decide whether or not this is something that we want to continue in. And if the council decides that that's not something they want to continue in, we wouldn't owe any fees at that point, and we could remove ourselves from the trust. With that, I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director.
Thank you, sir. That is a correct statement. The council has until July 1st of 2024 to pay the $15,000 membership fee that would be applicable to the city of this size. So you have until June 30th to withdraw if you so choose to become a member. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our representative, Mr. Adam. Adam, if you can remind me your last name.
Edelson.
Mr. Adam Edelson.
One second, let me share the proper screen. My apologies. Okay, you should be able to proceed now.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm pleased to be here in the great city of Bell Gardens to give you this presentation. So for the past year, the Gateway Cities Council of Governments has been working with various stakeholders and committees to be able to consider forming an affordable housing trust. It's something that has been done in surrounding areas such as Orange County, San Gabriel, Los Angeles, and many other areas up and down the state. In that time period, there's been a lot of due diligence work that's been done. And January 4th of this year, the Gateway Cities Council of Governments General Board unanimously approved moving forward with the consideration for the formation of the trust. And since that time, we've been making presentations at various city councils, and those cities that are in the light color are the cities that have already joined the trust. Excuse me, the dark color are cities that have already joined the trust. The cities in the light color are ones in which we're currently talking to and have scheduled council meetings for consideration of joining the trust. So we have 9 cities that have already joined, and we're in discussions with actually 6 now. Santa Fe Springs is now scheduling their council meeting for later this month. Part of our due diligence that we did in the past year was we looked at, how much demand is there for affordable housing in the Gateway Cities region. And one metric that we looked at was in the past 8 years, or the housing element cycle, how many affordable housing units were created through the tax credit allocation process, which is a financing mechanism that comes through the state to help build affordable rental projects. This is just one example of affordable housing. There, of course, are many examples of affordable housing, including ownership housing, rental housing, and other types. But one metric was to look at how many affordable multifamily rental projects were built. And you can see from this that 58 projects were financed in the Gateway Cities region in the last 8 years, and nearly 6,000 units were also financed as well. Bell Gardens, as you can see on there, towards the latter third, 75 units and 1 project. So the other thing that we looked at was we wanted to know a survey to all the cities in the Gateway Cities region to ask, well, what is being currently considered for future development projects that haven't been constructed, that are in negotiations with the developer who is looking for that financing to be able to get that gap completed and be able to get the project built. And so through that survey at the end of last year, we discovered that there were nearly 4,000 affordable units under consideration and negotiations with developers. So the natural question is, what is a housing trust? The housing trust is a funding source to finance the preservation or the production of affordable housing. It is established by state, county, and cities as a joint powers authority. In the case of Gateway Cities, it was decided through the Trust Steering Committee and different committees that this would be exclusively for the cities of the Gateway Cities region. The funding sources that the trust looks towards to be able to help finance the development of affordable housing is coming from federal, state, local sources, meaning the County of Los Angeles. And we're hoping private philanthropy and foundations step in once the trust gets going and shows some track record with the success of getting that funding. Many of the foundations and philanthropy groups have as part of their mission some form of affordable housing, and we hope that we can work with them. The other natural question is, what does this do for Bell Gardens? And this bullet point list shows some of the great benefits that can help the city of Bell Gardens. The first one is not only that we're bringing that gap funding in, but studies have shown that usually affordable housing in a city is benefiting the population that already resides within the city. Trust funding helps to make affordable housing in general more competitive so that other layers of government funding can come in. In other words, some of these sources of funding look for already subsidized funding to come in, and then additional sources come in later. The trust helps the city to meet your obligations and mandate that the state imposes. And so that RENA number is something that the trust can help the city to achieve. The membership in the trust also helps to attract other funding that we're going after. And my experience with some of the other trusts that I've worked with, the legislators that are in those areas are looking for a collaborative regional entity that is working together with the crisis, that the region is facing. Affordable housing usually is not an isolated city by city effort. We can do a lot better when we look at the crisis holistically and regionally. The trust also works collaboratively, not only to create that affordable housing by financing it, but usually when a regional collaborative entity like this gets together, and we've seen this in other trusts in California, they get a, so to speak, a seat at the table with some of the other efforts that are going on, service providers, nonprofits, the County of LA. This is a trust that represents you and the cities exclusively from the Gateway Cities region to ensure that your voice is heard wherever that is being at the state, federal, or county level, and that we bring the fair share of funding that this region deserves. And then finally, all of this work that is being funded and supported for this benefit is being done, and the city gets the RENA credit, and the trust takes on all the compliance requirements for developing the loan documents and then the annual compliance requirements to ensure that loan documents are held in place. This slide shows the variety of things over the past year that we focused on, including looking at best practices summaries of other trusts, a housing needs assessment, a strategic plan, which becomes our blueprint for that initial year, a funding strategy of capital and administrative funding that we need to do, and a fundraising strategy working with the private philanthropy and foundations. In our first year, we're hoping that we'll have our notice of funding available sometime later this year, but right now we're aggressively looking at a timeline that is coming up quickly, which is in May. And in May, there's an opportunity for the trust to apply for a state grant of $5 million to be able to achieve, bring that funding in and be able to finance affordable housing development. That deadline is in May, and the requirement of that funding source from the state of California is that there's another $5 million of matching dollars. And so this slide is showing you the first two lines that so far the trust has either secured or received a pledge from the County of LA of almost $3 million. We're actually going after additional funding sources at the county that will hopefully exceed our $5 million obligation, and then we'll be able to apply in May for that. We're also looking at SCAG having a grant program called REAP 2.0, and we will be applying for that this summer for $7.5 million. And we've been working closely with SCAG on that program, and our trust has some favorable ideas about what to do with that. There's a list of other funding sources that are identified that can be used in future years or later this year. We tried to identify what might be some of the key components of the proposed or the now approved JPA. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure that cities knew is the steering committee and various committees wanted to make sure that this trust was broad in its mission and vision. And by broad, I mean that we can, first of all, do any type of affordable housing, both ownership and rental. And they wanted it broad in terms of the population served. So instead of just limiting it to extremely low income, it addresses not only extremely low income, but all the way up to moderate income category. There's no more broad category you can get than every category of affordable housing income by population. The composition of the board consists of 9 trust board members. 7 of those are elected officials appointed by the Gateway Cities COG board, and 2 are directors that have housing expertise, and they're appointed by the city manager's committee. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some timing of the trust board of directors, I think, on one of the next 2 slides. There is administrative costs to operate the trust. As Gus mentioned, we have been able to secure some grant funding, some seed money really from the county to encourage us to get the trust going. And that does keep us going until June 30th of next year. And then after that, then the administrative funding you see listed here by population will be invoiced to different cities that are members of the trust. There is a provision in the JPA that allows for a city to withdraw at any time with a city resolution and a notice of 6 months. This slide shows that the members of the trust steering committee that we met on 3 different occasions, each of one of those meetings lasted a couple of hours, where we went over various policy choices and reviewed the formation issues and the governance issues of the trust. It was really without having any governing board until we actually legally get formed, it was our effort to actually have staff be able to run by this committee a group of policy choices that we needed to make. The other committees you see below that are committees that we met with once we had this trust steering committee's endorsement of how to proceed forward. That's a lot of people reviewing this formation. And at the end of each one of those committee meetings, we had unanimous support by each committee to move forward with the recommendation to form the trust. As I mentioned in January, we met before the Gateway Cities COG board, received their approval. We're now in that second line of January to March, where we're going around to city councils and requesting them to consider joining the trust. In March, this month, we will be issuing, in fact, today, we are sending out our applications for trust board of director applications, those 7 elected officials and 2 housing experts. At the April 5th COG board meeting, that's where the appointment to the trust for the directors will occur. And then our first meeting of the trust with that new trust board will be in the first week of May. Just to wrap up things, this slide shows the region of the gateway cities. The word of the day is collaboration. Collaboration in terms of creating synergy, working together. We can do better by working together. And this trust is exactly formed to just achieve that goal. I'm available to answer any questions, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much for your presentation today.
Okay.
Staff gave direction under these 2 items, so at this moment, I'll open it up for motions.
I make a motion to take staff's recommendation and join the trust.
I'll go ahead and second that. I'll go for it.
Okay. Second by Councilmember Barstina. City Clerk, roll call.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Barstina?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pulido?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez?
Yes.
And Mayor Cortez?
Going to be a yes, but City Manager, can we direct to bring this back before the 1 year?
Yes, Mayor Cortez. So I was communicating with Gus Romar, Community Development Director, to make sure that we table or that we calendar an agenda item for the council. We'll confirm the deadline, and I don't mean to start something and then talk negatively about it. So forgive us, but just to set our safety net there. We'll make sure we understand when the deadline would be if we decided we did not want to stay in the trust and we wanted to get out before we had had incurred any costs. We'll calendar an item to bring back to council at a later date with enough time to make that decision.
And Mr. City Manager, I just confirmed with Mr. Adam Racing, it would be up till June 30th for the first year of 2024.
So I think since the question is here and we have our trust, I guess, advisor here. So it seems as though the council, if they were going to give if they were to join and wanted to give 6 months notice, they would have to give that notice in December of 2023.
Yeah, this question came up previously from another city, and we huddled and determined that for this first initial year, we're going to go all the way up to June 30th, just so that we show as much time as possible for accomplishments. So after that, though, then it would just be a 6-month notice. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we'll calendar for the council's benefit. We'll calendar some kind of an update at the latest next May, if not sooner, if there's something to report as far as progress and things like that go, or if there's requests from the council for an earlier update. But at minimum, we'll calendar one for May of next year. So at least we're a year into it and we're ahead of the curve for anything that the council may want to do.
Perfect. Thank you, City Manager. Moving on to discussion item number 13.
Thanks again, Mayor Cortez. So this item's also an item that we discussed, I believe, at the last council meeting regarding the turf renovation project. The city believes that we would get a rebate grant from Central Basin to convert all of the turf at City Hall. So from the library all the way around Florence Place up Garfield to just past the police department prior to the fire department to convert to drought tolerant plants. Our public works director has worked with our design team that's working on the aquatic center as well to come up with something that would be more aesthetically pleasing than just the very basics. So since the majority of this process would be funded through grants, it might make sense for the council to spend a little bit more money to get a much better plan in place, considering that, again, a significant portion will be funded by grants. So with that, I'll turn over to our public works director, Grisel Chavez.
Thank you, Mr. O'Kelly. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I will get right into showing you the beautiful renderings prepared by our design team. As Mike has already provided the background information, but I'd be happy to answer any other details or questions. So I'll start with the proposed planting palette. Okay, could you go to the next slide? So if you see in the screen in front of you, that is a combination of plant material and different ground covering proposed from different types of aloe, desert bird of paradise, wild lilac, Texas soto, silver carpet, red yucca, dwarf deer grass, gold gravel, combination sizes of 2-inch rocks to longer 5-foot sections of boulders. So that's the same theme you'll see throughout, as our city manager shared. The desert decomposed granite DG look is gone away from the original idea, and they've come up with such a beautiful, I think, concept for the design around the Civic Center that would make it look more lush and just beautiful, in my opinion. So I'll start with this first the next picture here shows what the plantings would look like, newly planted, the smaller 5-gallon plant variety. This would be as you enter into the driveway into the City Hall parking lot. And the next slide shows you what that material would look like upon being established and grown and within a year to 2 years time, if I remember correctly. And going on to the next slide, just another view. As you walk up around the council chambers, the light brown color material is gravel, that would be applied. And the green patches that you see is, I think it's a silver carpet. So it'll spread out as you see in the next slide. As you saw in the prior picture, when it's fully grown, it would look something like that, but it would take some time. So I wanted to show council the before pictures because the after would take some time to get there, right? The next slide shows a view along the police department. Along the sidewalk areas there, you'll see the combination of the boulders, different sizes. And the next slide shows again, fully grown. The next slide is, I think, another view of the same planters. You drive in along the library driveway, and the next slide shows it fully grown. And then the next slide shows the rear south entrance of the City Hall building along the parking lot. And the next slide shows it once it's fully grown again. So at this point, we're looking for any feedback from council, changing up any of the variety of plant material or colors, anything you'd like to see before we proceed. If council wants to proceed, with the application to the Central Basin Water District for the rebate. And as Mr. O'Kelly shared, we're looking at a cost of up to about $134,000. We are still finalizing the cost with our landscape contractor since the design did change from the original DG with the plant material selected. We're hopeful that the cost will remain within that same ballpark. We should get that in the next week or two from the contractor. And if there were additional appropriation needed outside of that rebate amount, we can ask council for an appropriation at the time we are to award a contract to the landscape contractor. But also perhaps prior to that time, during the discussions with the new costs and the new concepts with the Central Basin Metropolitan Water District, maybe they have more money that they can fund for the rebate. So at this point, just looking for any council feedback, thoughts, and direction on proceeding further. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may. I just wanted to ask, who made the renderings for was it a company or was it in-house?
Oh, it was the landscape design team through through RJM.
Oh, okay. Oh, we know that. Okay. Well, they look great and the ideas are great. Good job. And I'm
Yes, they did a great
fully
job.
supportive of it.
Thank you so much for the presentation, Grisel. As Councilmember Barsana mentioned, these renderings, they look really good. They look great. I really like them. And I have an idea, but I want to pitch it to my colleagues, and perhaps maybe we could do something with this. By when do we need to have like a plan solidified in terms of giving it to someone and having them actually make it happen? You know, I know you mentioned, hey, how do you want it in order? Like, where do you want certain plants and stuff? But when do we need to have that sort of layout per se?
So we should finalize the layout before the application is submitted to Central Basin. So in case any of the layout changes, adjust the cost for any amount. So I would say, and then the rebate program is open until funding runs out. So at this point, there's no hard deadline for when the application needs to be submitted. But I would recommend having the layout finalized so we can get the updated cost from the contractor, and then we submit the rebate application.
Gotcha. Now, the reason I asked was because I know that we have a couple of dates there, May 2023, and then by the end of summer 2023, we'll be done. At least that's what we're trying to aim for. But the idea that I have is potentially maybe doing some interaction with our students, right? Maybe pitching it to some of the schools. I know some of the elementary schools, but maybe potentially putting together a layout for them to pick and choose, right? And to create sort of their own little, how they want to see City Hall, the surrounding areas around here. You know, and just pitch it to the principals, and then have the principals give it to some of the teachers, and then have the students themselves design what they want to see the City Hall look like. And we got a list of things that we can pick from, right? They give us from A through J, boulders. We got some of these words I can't even pronounce. Aloe Barbardinis. What else do they have? Dynamic Margaretti or something like that. So I mean, you know, there's a lot of El Dorado gold gravel, right? Have them sort of work with this and design what they want to see in the front of City Hall. I think that'd be a great idea. I don't know if that's something possible. Maybe staff could go ahead and assist in that, but I know it's not in the recommendation, but potentially could we do that moving forward with this? Just kind of have an idea.
I mean, just my general thought would be, I mean, it sounds like a great idea. I think it slows the project down. You know, we probably take, I guess with school coming to an end, we probably stop what our recommendation is here to some degree to come up with basically a different design than what we have here or some modified version of it. So I think we can do that. It's probably push everything back by maybe 3 months or so with school. So it's doable.
I was trying to aim for between March and that May deadline, give or take, right? I don't know how long it'll take between the turnaround for students to actually have some findings. Yeah, just an idea. But if due to time constraints, we can't. I mean, I understand.
Well, let us see within the time constraints just what we can do to incorporate something like this. I mean, I think we'd all rather have buy-in from the community in addition to just, you know, the staff members and the council. There's people that come by here and see it all the time. So I'm sure we can incorporate some form of that in there and stay on the same time schedule.
I personally don't mind the delay. I don't like it. I think it's too dull for our city hall, and our buildings are old and they need a lot of like tender love and care. So I don't know, there's a possibility of even seeing the materials. I just don't think seeing it virtual is gonna, or it doesn't paint a realistic picture of what that would look like. At least that's my opinion. I personally don't like it. I know our community might not like it either. So maybe seeing the materials or even engaging others to provide an opinion or seeing how else we can give the outside of our city hall a little facelift.
Perfect. I mean, if somebody has an opinion that varies, I mean, I like it, but if Jorge has an idea about kind of having a second look at it, maybe the mayor can join the workshop. I don't know.
I will say this compared to how it is right now, and no hate to how it looks right now. I'd prefer to have this over just green grass. If not possible due to time constraint with the students from the schools, local schools, maybe doing something with our rec department. I know we have some of the students engaged right there at the NYC or Veterans Park and after school programs. Maybe have them do an hour and a half, give or take, to just, 30 minutes per se, just kind of have them draw up something about how they want to see City Hall. Just a suggestion.
I can just say, just from the staff perspective, I mean, I think we want everybody to be excited about the project. So I think we'll keep this as sort of the bones of the project, but I think, I don't know, Griselle, if we were to kind of pull back for a minute, it doesn't sound like the funding is like imminently about to go away. We've spent some money just to get some basic design to get something that might look better, but obviously, if it goes way greener than that, it's probably not drought tolerant anymore and maybe not qualify or use as much water as the grass. So I think maybe if the direction from council was to just kind of go back again and do a little more work on, I think maybe it would help if we found some examples that we could maybe see like tour in person, not just a material like in your hand, but where you could see it in front of a building would probably be helpful.
Maybe do some maybe let's see some city halls that have already done this, right? Some of the city halls going towards like Riverside County or San Bernardino County that potentially have already taken this approach. But other than that, I'm excited for this. I think this is a good opportunity in terms, and it's free, right? Eventually it's going to be free. So let's do it. It's not every day we get to just change up the front of City Hall. So that's why I wanted to incorporate the youth, for them to be able to say, hey, I designed this, or I had an input when it came to this. Yeah.
Do we know of other cities that have benefited from this rebate and have already implemented the change within their city?
Okay, it was on. I apologize. Mayor Pro Tem, I do not know offhand, but I'm sure that the Central Basin Metropolitan Water District can provide that information.
Will we be able to get that just so we're able to see pictures or actually visit in person so that we can kind of compare what we would like here for us?
Yes, I'll provide that information for council information and any pictures that we can get. Thank you.
So if I can just maybe clarify for staff's perspective, I think the direction is to do some more work behind the scenes. And maybe if I modify, I guess I'm not sure if I can change the staff's recommendations here to, request, instead of directing us to proceed with the project to the extent that we apply for the rebate and things like that. I guess if we just get direction to maybe table this item and bring it back at a later date after we've done some more work as far as demonstration of actual materials in some places where it's already been done, and then possibly incorporate additional input from residents, whether it be school children, seniors, and other council members and everybody else that uses City Hall.
Thank you, City Manager. If there is no objection, I'd like to move forward with that recommendation of tabling and bringing back.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Chavez, roll call vote.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Barsina?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pulido?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez?
Yes.
And Mayor Cortez?
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. City Manager, discussion item 14.
Thank you again, Mayor Cortez. So this item is a consideration of an ordinance change that would amend our municipal code to change our sidewalk vending code so that it's consistent with the most current state law. I believe 2 meetings back, maybe 3 meetings back, this item was discussed, and staff, in conjunction with our legal counsel, we're following direction from council and bringing this item back to clean up to make sure that it's in compliance. With that, I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Gus Roma.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. This, in essence, is a cleanup effort of our sidewalk vending ordinance, chapter 5.56. A couple of sections that we had a look at, the section related to or pertaining to violations and penalties, and also the impoundment process. The impoundment process itself has been deleted in its entirety, and the violations and penalties, one sentence has been removed. And I'll turn it over to our legal counsel, Ms. Susie Altamirano, to discuss that.
Thank you, Gus. Mayor, City Council, so in compliance with SB 496, we did clean up the ordinance, as Gus had mentioned, to remove the impoundment process and also the violation and penalties, removing a levy, a lien on the violator's real and personal property. So that is no longer in the ordinance, the proposed ordinance language. Again, being in compliance with SB 946. If you have any questions, happy to answer those.
So Community Development Director Roma and maybe Susie, if you can help. So essentially, what we did on this ordinance was strike, the biggest change was striking the section regarding our ability to actually confiscate equipment from sidewalk vendors. I think beyond that, there were no other changes made other than just to bring us into compliance with state law. Part of the benefit here is so that staff obviously knows we can't violate law regardless of what the municipal code says, and also for users of the municipal code such as sidewalk vendors or even brick and mortar vendors, so that when they look up the municipal code or they have an attorney that looks up the municipal code, that they'll see that there are actions they don't see things that look like we can actually carry out that we're not allowed to. Gus, I don't know if you want to expound on that.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. City Manager. And ultimately, when we provided the update to the sidewalk vending ordinance back in February, it was to identify what's been going on with enforcement in general. And our legal counsel had brought up to us that there is an amendment to the existing ordinance that should be done. And again, it was more of a cleanup. This amendment, though, does not address some of the concerns that were brought up to you by the brick and mortar businesses in terms of location and also time of operation, those type of things. So again, specifically, this is just for those 2 items.
And I also just say from a staff perspective, I mean, I think our recommendation at that time as well was to allow us to put some additional energy into getting compliance with the ordinance as the way that it's currently written before recommending any further changes. So there are activities currently ongoing. Some actually I think just this evening after some issues were brought up. So Gus, I wonder if you could at least update the council with some of the activities that have been ongoing since that time. And we think based on these activities, if we obviously still don't see additional compliance, that we would come back to council with any potential changes that may be made to the ordinance to make compliance efforts more effective.
Certainly. The things that we've done is we've taken direction from the council to enforce the ordinance. And so we've got a directive memo that we sent out to our staff identifying, yes, we need to move forward with notices of violation that would then be followed by administrative citations if they don't, if the vendors that don't have permits or licenses fail to comply. And so we are taking a stronger enforcement on this. And we've also put together a flyer, which has been put on our city's website, both in English and Spanish, and we're passing it out to the business community also identifying that we are here to assist the vendors to get into compliance. They just need to contact staff and we'll be happy to coordinate with the health department. However, we're also notifying our residents out there that please purchase from those vendors that are permitted, that have gone through the process of getting their health permit. That way you don't encourage those that do not have their permits to continue.
Gus, have we seen any updates on or any of these street vendors apply for permits since we've been going out and doing outreach and speaking to them in the past couple of weeks? Have any applied for permits?
No, we've received a couple of calls, but they've been from the brick and mortar businesses complaining about continued enforcement efforts. So we've gone out there just today. We had two street vendors that we've asked them to leave and they did comply. So there hasn't been any again that have come in for assistance.
And you asked them to leave because they were
operating without a health permit
Without a
or
health
business license.
just to
There was also an ADA issue, right? They were blocking.
Yes, that is correct. One of them was blocking ADA access.
Okay. And then just to reiterate, these changes are made because you're not in compliance with state law. So state law doesn't allow us or permit us to have these provisions within our policy.
That is correct.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
Thank you so much for the information, Gus. Quick question, and just for clarification, because a lot of times I'm seeing, I've heard and just for clarification, the city doesn't have regulation when it comes to the public space or where they can be put or not, where the street vendor can set up and where they cannot set up. Is that correct?
There's no locational criteria as long as they meet the standards of the law, which identifies the public right of way. They need to leave enough access for pedestrians. They cannot block the right of way completely, but those standards are within the code. And our building department does enforce those as well.
Gotcha. Thank you. The reason I was asking is because there's been concerns from local businesses that, perhaps have street vendors that set up maybe, right next to them, if not right in front of their business, and it's starting to impact them. So, there's only so much that we as a city can do because the law is just so vague per se at the state level, correct?
That is correct, sir. In fact, a few cities got together and made a presentation to the Gateway Cities COG last year. We met with representatives from the state to talk about that locational criteria. They took it to the state, but they did not wish to change that within the law.
Thank you.
Any other questions? At this point, I'll go ahead and move forward with staff's recommendation that the city council waive the full reading and introduce ordinance number 932 by title, amending chapter 5.56 of the Bell Gardens Municipal Code pertaining to sidewalk bending to remove language inconsistent with SB 946.
I second.
City clerk, roll call vote.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Barsina,
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez,
Yes.
Councilwoman Pulido,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez,
Yes.
and Mayor Cortez.
That is a yes. And city manager, can at a later time, can we schedule an update with regards to the status? Perhaps how many businesses have applied for or street vendors have applied for permits, et cetera, so we can get an update and see what our next steps will be.
Mayor Cortez, we can schedule a compliance update for the April 10th council meeting.
Okay, and if not, then the following meeting after that's fine. City manager, this is our last discussion item, I believe.
Item number 16.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cortez. This item is our fiscal year 22-23 mid-year budget review. So this is the time when, the council adopts a budget usually in June. just prior to the start of the fiscal year on July 1st. The budget at that time is based on the best information that's available. Revenues can change depending on the economic environment, economic climate, things of that nature. Expenditures are modified by the council periodically throughout the fiscal year as well. So staff comes to council and says, hey, there's opportunity to purchase this equipment or to execute these contracts to provide some level of service. In some cases, the council directs staff. So the mid-year basically accounts for all of the items that the council has approved. And also, if there are additional revenues that weren't anticipated when the budget was adopted, also makes recommendations for additional expenditures for the rest of the fiscal year. And really just to make sure that our budgetary revenues, expenditures, and everything's in order. That wasn't coming through?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Manuel Carrillo, our Administrative Services Director, to go through the details of the presentation. And just fair warning, I may stop a few times in there to add some specificity, some of the information that's shown there. But I'll do my best to let Manuel talk through and let the council answer questions. Go ahead, Manuel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Before we begin, can everyone hear me okay? Wonderful. Thank you so much. Mayor Cortez, Mayor Pro Tem De Leon Sanchez, Council Members Pulido, Barson, and Chavez, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. We'll be going over and providing a brief overview of the mid-year budget, highlighting our progress up to this point and projecting through the end of the current fiscal year. Next slide, please. For some historical context, here we have a brief overview of the Bicycle Casino's operational timeline going back to the 1920 fiscal year. As you can see, the Bicycle Casino experienced significant operational closures in fiscal year 1920 and 2021 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. There were no operational closures in fiscal year 21-22, and the operations are expected to continue at full capacity for the remainder of the 22-23 fiscal year. Next slide, please. Here we have a visual of the year-end actuals going back to fiscal year 18-19. For the current year, 22-23, the city adopted a budgeted revenue of $14,900,000 for the Bicycle Casino. Based on actuals received through the end of February, we are projecting a historical high of $18,300,000 through the end of the current fiscal year. Next slide, please. Here we have a look back at the original adopted general fund budget for 22-23. This was the first year in which we did not receive any ARPA funds as a result of, or COVID funds as they're referred to, as we had done the previous 2 fiscal years. Next slide, please. Here we have a revised mid-year forecast. As you can see, the original adopted budget for fiscal year 22-23, we expected a surplus or change in fund balance of $168,000. The revised forecast, which is based on actuals received through the end of February, we are projecting a surplus or change in fund balance of $1.9 million. This is as a result of increases in revenue and expense, which we will look at in greater detail in the next slides. Next slide, please. On this slide, we'll take a look in detail some of the increases in revenue that we're expecting through the end of the fiscal year. The biggest being the Bicycle Casino fees, which are expected to come in at $3.4 million above the original adopted amount. Other increases are PD-related refunds and reimbursements, as well as state rent program revenue received from the prior year. Next slide, please. As indicated previously, we are expecting to see increases of $2.9 million in expenditures to the end of the fiscal year. These increases are primarily due to changes in personnel costs, contractual services, and capital outlays. Next slide, please. On this slide, oh, there you go. On this slide, we have some detail on the increases that are expected to the general fund. As indicated, the most significant increases are to personnel costs, contractual services, and capital outlays.
Manya, if we can stop on the
Yes.
slide for a minute, I just
Sure,
want
of course.
that the council understands on the additional appropriation request. Some of these items have already come to council for appropriations, and in some cases, the project's already completed. And in some cases, some of these items will still come before the council prior to the end of the fiscal year. One item that I just want to call out, if you look at the final line there, capital outlay, there's been either additional appropriation requests have already been approved or future that will come. And the final item that you see in the description there, it says Public Works, Veterans Yard, Access Road. So what this is this will come to the council. This is a project that we've talked about in relation to the new aquatic center, where currently we have our trash trucks and other maintenance vehicles on the pedestrian pathways. And the proposal will be to create a road that comes around back by the golf course, comes around the back of the ball fields, and then gets to the yard there. So it eliminate really any interaction between pedestrians or sports players and maintenance vehicles and trash. So I just want to make sure the council understands the items here have either been approved by the council or they'll come before the council before the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Next slide, please. This slide provides some detail on additional expenditures to other city funds that are expected through the end of the current fiscal year. Next slide, please. This slide provides some insight into the existing capital projects that are budgeted and are carried forward from the previous fiscal year. Next slide, please. This slide identifies the expected fund balance, which will be through the end of the current fiscal year. At the end of fiscal year 21-22, the fund balance was identified as at $3,344,000. A projected increase of $1.9 million at the end of the current fiscal year would result in a projected fund balance of $32.2 million as of June 30th, 2023.
And Manuel, if we can stop on this slide.
Yeah,
so we've been talking about revenues, expenditures. So revenues being monies in, expenditures being monies out. Whatever's left over goes into your fund balance. Obviously, the fund balance has grown over the last several years due to a number of reasons. If you look at the pie chart up at the left, I just want to call out that somewhat where it says non-spendable, $5.2 million. So our general fund records that as monies that are due to the general fund. But in the case of water fund receivables, there's a significant amount of time before the general fund would be expected to recoup those monies from the water fund because it's been in a deficit. So while there's $32 million in fund balance, which is good that it's growing, approximately 5.2 of it is non-spendable. You couldn't spend it if you want to because it's a receivable. But beyond that, why would a city have a fund balance? Just for new council members and as a refresher for council members who've sat on the council for a number of years, that's basically to account for things such as COVID or other catastrophic financial failures that do occur every 10, 15 years. So a previous slide manual showed that we'd received about $10 million of ARPA money. That's federal funds that were provided to municipalities, among other agencies. The casino card room revenue went to zero for a number of months. And the fund balance, spendable fund balance, I believe had whittled down into the range of about $8 or $9 million at one point prior to us receiving the ARPA funds. So a city such as Bell Gardens that has a significant one-time source of revenue would generally be expected to have a higher fund balance to account for those types of financial issues that do occur from time to time. But I guess the final thing I would just say is that this is positive news. Obviously, a increasing fund balance is better than a decreasing fund balance. With that, I'll turn it back over to Manuel.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Next slide, please. The next two slides, and you could go to the next one too, please, as well, provides a simple framework for the budget preparation process for the next fiscal year. Over the course of the next 4 months, we'll be working quite hand-in-handly with the various departments to establish a solid budget for the city that, of course, that addresses the needs for 23-24. So this is just an overview of some of the deadlines that we establish. Of course, working with the different departments, getting their feedback on the needs that they have, and then relaying that information and working with the city manager's office to develop a budget that's both logical and works with everyone and definitely meets the needs of the city. And that does conclude our presentation. I did want to take just a brief moment to thank our finance staff for their efforts in putting this information together. I would especially like to thank, and it saddens me a little bit to say, our former accounting manager, Remo Hansen, who was played such a critical role in helping the finance department. And unfortunately, last Thursday was her last day. So big thanks to her for all of her work. It was such an invaluable resource for the city and for everyone involved in assisting the city to move forward and to make sure that everything was done properly. We just wish her the best in her endeavors, and I just like to thank her for this. Just would like to state that if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll be here to answer any questions you might have. Then thank you so much for your time.
And Council, if I could just add to revenues, where the money's spent, and then presumably out of that, we would derive, suggestions from residents or requests from residents that we'd be able to report back and also incorporate into the budget process. So we've been looking at kind of mid-spring for that. So I think the month of April, probably roughly mid-April. So we would provide the information, get that information back, and be able to incorporate that in the budget process. So I just wanted to mention that item as well. Thank you.
Any questions, comments from the council? Okay, I'll go ahead and move to approve staff's recommendation to receive, discuss, and file fiscal year 2022-2023 mid-year budget report and approve the following additional appropriations for fiscal year 22-23 general fund 110, excluding vacancy savings, OTS fund, public safety augmentation fund, cops hiring grant, gas tax fund, and PD grant reimbursement fund. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Barsana. Roll call vote.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Barsana?
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilwoman Pulido?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez?
Yes.
And Mayor Cortez?
Yes. Motion carries. Now moving on to City Council Successor Agency member comments, beginning with Councilmember Barsana.
I want to thank the staff for doing a great job, as always. Thank you for everyone that provided public comment. And I'm still not used to being the first one. So maybe if I remember something later, please forgive me, Madam Mayor. But that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez.
Real quick, thank you so much, everybody, for the great council meeting. Muchas gracias a las vecinas por, estarse aquí por tanto tiempo, ¿verdad? Ya están las 8, empezamos a las 6. So muchas gracias. Le aprecio que estén aquí. So I was just saying thank you to the vecinas for being here. They've stayed throughout the whole council meeting, so I really admire that they're being active and being informed about what's happening in their city. Real quick, there's been a couple things that have happened since the last council meeting. I got to the day after the last council meeting on Monday, the last meeting, it was the last meeting of February. Next day I attended a podcast. It's called for this, the podcast name is called Let's Get Real. And it's from this former student from Bell Gardens High School. Me and him went to, we were actually the same class, 2015. And, it was an interesting podcast. It was about an hour and a half, and we got to touch on a variety of topics, about what's happening in the city, what we do and how we can change things per se. I really enjoyed doing the podcast because it was a podcast that got the questions that he asked me were directly from the community itself. He asked me like 3 questions, and the fact that they went into Facebook group Bell Gardens Uncensored, and they were like, hey, I'm meeting with some council member, what are some questions you want to know, what's some questions that you want to garner. So we touched on like homelessness, we touched on street vending, We touched on housing. I mean, those were, I think those were two for sure. I'm trying to remember another one that we touched on. But essentially, just how we conduct business and what we can and what we can't do. Right. So yeah, it was a good experience. It was ultimately a good experience. I wanted to touch on one of the things that a resident had mentioned, and it was regarding Loveland and Garfield. I know obviously we can't interact in terms of public comment, but now that I'm my council member comments, I would like to actually get a response to that in terms of, do we have a status update? I know that that's been there for well over a year. I think even prior to my election to council, I think it's been there as well. So I don't know if staff can answer that, but I don't know if y'all familiar which one I'm talking about. The right next to the DMV. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember Chavez. So regarding the concern expressed by the resident, that closure of Garfield and Loveland is associated with the county sewer rehabilitation project that has been going on for a long time. Currently, they are actively doing work on Garfield Avenue in front of St. Gertrude's Church City Hall, and then further down by the elementary school south of Florence. So those tanks that you see out there are essentially odor scrubbers. So what the county has explained to the city is they are required by OSHA. They're placed strategically upstream of the location, and there's others throughout the entire county corridor as they're working in different cities, right? So they place these so that essentially it eliminates or reduces some of the dangerous gases that are coming out of the sewer pipes as the workers are working live in the condition of the sewer pipe being live and open. They close it up at night and they put a temporary metal plate, and then they go back and they're working when the flow is lower, and the scrubbers help remove the gases to keep safe working conditions while they're in the pipe working. So the last estimated completion date for the entire project, at least in Bell Gardens, was going to be around end of April. So I am going to be getting an updated time frame for completion from the county, and I will share that with the city council, and then we'll continue to post updates on the website and social media. But I do believe they will not meet the end of April timeframe, as they have experienced just unforeseen conditions have come up. The pipe material isn't available. There's been sections of the pipe they've encountered that aren't what they expected. So it's just ongoing delays, unfortunately. But the county, we are working with the county to continue to get updates, our inspectors out there to make sure they're making progress. But it has unfortunately taken a lot longer than expected. But like I said, we'll share the updated timeframe. I don't have it right now, but we'll get that this week.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for sure. I know like a lot of these other projects, they just get delayed and delayed and delayed. If possible, if you could put pressure on these folks, it's becoming a nuisance to their community, right? As I mentioned, this has been here probably since before I was elected, and that was in 2020. We're in 2023. So it's been well over 3 years. With that said, if we could put pressure on them about that. Another thing I wanted to mention, and this is now to Director Romo, and we touched on it, I think, in the last council meeting. We gave direction to potentially put out a letter, right, to all the community, to all the landowners and the property owners and renters about the new ordinance. I'm curious to know the status on that. And I know we also mentioned it about including it on BG Today, Bell Garden Today in the future. If there's an update on that at all?
Yes, Councilman Chavez, we're actually reaching out also to nonprofits to be able to send out more outreach efforts and just increase the amount of people that know about this. And ultimately, we're also updating our frequently asked questions. However, that letter that we want to put out, it's a letter that not only is going to be sent out, but it's also going to be put into social media and the website. We do feel that we don't hear from residents until the council meeting comes up. So we definitely want them to come and speak to us. Some of the ones that spoke today, I'm going to be reaching out to them tomorrow. But I want to make sure that people aren't confusing what the ordinance allows and does not allow. Because ultimately, I feel that the landlords are reaching out more than the tenants are at this point. They're submitting their applications for fair market rent increases, et cetera. I want to make sure that those tenants are also submitting contesting forms, because if something is happening that is not to ordinance, they can contest that. There's a simple one-page application. We'll help them go through that and we'll respond very quickly. Our turnaround has normally been within 48 hours.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that we're also trying to assist them on that effort, because I know that a big part of it has been that, either on one end, the landowner of the property owner doesn't respect the law in and of itself. Or on the second hand, the landowner doesn't know about their rights in terms of contesting their own increase, right? And obviously we've heard it from the community itself that there has been well over estimates that are way above the 4%, right? That's the limit, or 4%, that's the limit. So that was, I'm glad to see that we're taking care of that. I know I'm running short on time. Finally, if I can share one more thing, and it's kind of actually, I wanted to share two more things. I don't know if I can.
You have a minute.
I have a minute. Thank you. One thing, I know we talked about the farmers markets, and I love the fact that we have the farmers markets here. I know that's a bit of a schedule conflicting for the community. I know we've been flexible about having it, till 3 once the students come out from SUVA, till 4, 3, 4, give or take. Has there been any sort of conversations about maybe changing it up, maybe even having during the weekend when people might be a little bit more available to attend the farmers market? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback where they want to attend, they think it's an awesome idea, but they just can't make it during those hours because they're working or,
Yes, Councilman Chavez. Part of the reason that date and time was selected is due to the availability of the vendors and the farmers. And so there's absolutely the ability to have conversations about the needs of the city and the community. So if we feel that in the future, another date and time would better serve our community, we can come back to Venaver Events and ask them what availability their vendors have. They do serve a number of cities in the area with farmers markets. And so they have somewhat of a limited availability, but we can definitely have that conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm looking forward to hearing that, because I know that there's a lot of interest on this, but I know when we created it, we just said Friday and here are the times and show up kind of thing. And I've seen all the flyers. I love that. One final thing, and thank you so much, Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this or to extend my time. But I do think this is some very useful information. I think we all had kind of questions about it.
Yes, but if at this point you could just give direction as opposed to asking questions.
This is my last direction, or my last comment, I should say. And it's in regard to the next meeting when we have, I know that there's been a lot of conversation about the fields happening at Bell Gardens Ford Park. Can we potentially have an item brought to the agenda where we're discussing the use of those fields? There's been a lot of conversation about the use of the fields and potentially interest groups that perhaps want to come in and kind of use them and support, right? So for the next council meeting, if we could have that agenda item, please. Thank you. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, I remember one thing. I know I'm gonna get it for this, but I like to ask for an update, maybe not a whole agenda item, but just maybe an update for the next meeting about the water cistern project. That's another one of those projects that has been dragging a lot, and a lot of the residents have reached out to me to complain about the parking situation. When is the parking lot going to be open, etc. So no need to answer any questions now. I just wanted to put it on for the next one. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez, your comments. Oh, I'm so sorry. Councilwoman Pulido. I apologize.
Wow. Just kidding. I just want to thank everybody for paying attention. Just kidding. Long meeting, productive meeting. Thank you for the staff and the presentations. They were very informative. I know that Mike was especially excited over the potential new landscaping of City Hall, but I'm sure he's from Riverside, so he wants to see Riverside in Bell Gardens. So, but we'll come up with something fun that makes sense for the community. But thank you so much. And that's it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Sanchez.
Thank you so much to everybody that came out, the people that are still here, the residents, staff, for being so informative always in all your presentations. I look forward to the event on the skate jam on Thursday from 6 to 8. So hopefully we can get a lot of residents out there. Thank you so much.
Okay, and I think, Mike, we're gonna have to sit down and plan the agenda because I'm adding a couple items as well, but that way we don't overload. Thank you so much, staff, for all the different reports and items that were brought today. Thank you for the community for being here. I do want to add an item in one of the following agendas with regards to parking. I did have a resident reach out about this issue. Maybe we could bring back a presentation about what we already have in place and then just have council revisit that idea, or at least just make it an informational presentation about the different tools that they can currently avail themselves from. Parks and Recs, I wanted to see if you can inquire about Student Government Day. I know it's something that we have ditched or that we haven't brought back due to the pandemic. So I would really love to see it come back. I think it's important for our students to be involved in government, and that's a great way to reintroduce them. And lastly, I do want to bring an item with regards to our trailer homes and rent control. I did talk to our attorneys previously about this item, and they did recommend the possibility of a separate ordinance because it is very specific to our trailer home parks. So if we can explore the options of either a separate ordinance or incorporating it to our current rent control ordinance, but to start exploring that subject so that we don't leave our trailer homes out. And that would be the last addition to the agenda. And with that, if there's no objection by the city council, I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 8:39 p.m.